Today is the first day of the Pennsylvania second crossbow season. A lot of people call that the Pennsylvania rifle season, but I call it second crossbow season because I'm a crossbow hunter. This is a crossbow hunting channel. Death by Bunjie is a crossbow hunting channel now, isn't it? And you're probably watching this because you are a crossbow hunter also. That's why we're going to talk about this wonderful scope. It is a crossbow scope. It's also a rifle scope, so it's really kind of an appropriate topic for today because you could put this on a rifle, and that's what they marketed it as. It's a range-finding scope, rifle scope, or crossbow scope. This is the Maxview Optics CERTIS Scope. Done a couple other videos on this, 3 or 4 other videos. Probably going to do more down the road. But I wanted to do this video to sort of catch you up in terms of where I'm at with this scope. Now that I've used it, now that I've killed a deer with it, now that I'm really, really liking this scope and I got my head around how it works and what doesn't. This scope had a real rough rollout. It didn't come out until October. Who releases a new crossbow hunting product during the crossbow season, right? Wait until everybody who hunts with a crossbow is in the woods and then release a new scope. Like one comment read, introduced at SHOT Show in January and promised in mid to late March, then delayed mid to late July, delayed again to mid-August, and now finally out late October. Something ain't right about this scope, and I am not spending $800 plus shipping for something I don't feel right about. Your problems are what I feared. The problem that I had was I thought that this scope was a dud. Now, I actually bought this, my own money, paid for it, had it shipped to me. I was one of the first people to have one, and I had nothing but trouble with it because I kept running the batteries down. The settings wouldn't save, and I thought there was a defect in the scope. It turns out that the scope is not supposed to shut off automatically. In the manual, right, if you read the manual, which every once in a while I do, I don't make a habit of that, and in this scope, honestly, you probably can figure out without the manual, but I tried to really get my head around it right off the bat. In the manual, it says hibernation and battery saver mode. Scope will go into hibernation mode after 15 minutes of no activity. Scope will fully shut down 45 minutes after no activity. Fully shut down, right? To me, fully shuts down means you don't have to turn it off with the power button when you're done hunting, but it turns out you do, in fact, need to turn it off with the power button if you want it to have any juice the next time you go to use the scope. So not a big deal. Once I figured that out, it works perfectly, and I can tell you I now have 2 of these scopes. Not only did I keep the original one that I got right here and put it back in service, it's going to go on the Patriot. How about that? That's the plan currently, with the SWAT X1. And the reason I'm putting it on there is because I have used this scope on the Enforcer. Yes, I love this crossbow. Killed a deer with this crossbow and scope combo on state game lands. Check out that video if you haven't done so already. Bottom line is, rough rollout or not, it worked perfectly for me, and I'm keeping the scopes. Wyvern Creations, immediately bought a second one off of them. They sent me this one, and before I got a chance to send this one back, I figured out the battery issue, the turning it off issue, and so I ended up keeping this one too. And I got to tell you, every single friend of Bunjie I've talked to has one of these scopes. It's the same operation. They turn on and off, and you got to turn them off. It doesn't automatically shut off. So shout out to Wyvern Creations. Again, I love Wyvern Creations. David at Wyvern Creations, great to deal with. Look at these caps. These are Wyvern Creations scope covers, right? You can check those out. 3D printed, real durable. You get the orange ones, and that way if you set it down in the woods, you don't lose it. We also have black ones with the purple logo on the front. Pretty cool, pretty sharp looking scope cover. They snap right on there and they stay in place. All good to go. So you can do that as well. On the topic of scope covers, if you're a BURRIS Oracle X guy, it fits right on here fine. You can just use your BURRIS Oracle X slicker. If you got one of the Alpines that I talked about before in other videos, you can just put that on the scope. It'll fit just fine. But if you buy one for it and you want one of those, get this. I think this is a smaller size. I'll put the sizes on the screen because I don't want to guess. This one fits a little bit better. This really is the size that you would want, and that it'll say right here in the video what size that is. So links are on deathbybunjie.com if you're interested in this kind of stuff. Here I am on the first day of the second crossbow season. It is November 29th, Saturday morning, and I got to tell you, this is a winner. don't hesitate to buy one of these. If you're interested in a range-finding scope, you certainly can buy one of these and be very content with it. I do believe that is the case. Still love the BURRIS Oracle X. If you already have a BURRIS Oracle X on your crossbow and it is working for you, then by all means, keep it and keep using it. I love the BURRIS Oracle X. But that rollout, the problems that I had with these scopes is nothing new. When I switched to the BURRIS Oracle X way back in the day, remember all the trouble I had with that. I went back and forth. If I didn't love the product so much, I wouldn't have stuck with the BURRIS Oracle X. But I'm telling you, a range-finding scope is just the future of crossbow hunting. My buck came in, and I started ranging him around 42 yards, and I got him down to 16.4 yards because I was ranging him with this scope, and because it has this handy-dandy, beautiful, perfect little remote on there. And I just reach up there, and I just click, click, click. Listen. And no, the deer's not going to hear that. But there's this little click, and you get that feel, and you play with it, and you just enjoy it, and you crave it. As the deer's coming in, you're just clicking away. It does have live scan mode. I don't use that kind of stuff because it's going to jump from 16 to 26 and back and forth because it's going to be, depending on where your crosshairs are. But it does have a live scan mode in here too if you want to do that. Let's talk about battery life. How long does the battery last? And you remember, you got a battery in here that's very easy to access compared to the Oracle X. Huge improvement over the Oracle X. You won't need a separate tool or anything like that, other than to tighten the cap up, which it does come with a tool with that, ironically. But the other thing, though, this remote has a battery as well. So you got to remember that this remote, you might have to take that off of there. I've got it on there with an automotive double-sided tape, and it stays on it real good. It was the same with the BURRIS Oracle X. They stay on real well. But you peel that off of there. I try to work a flathead screwdriver under it and lift it up real carefully so as you don't tweak this. You don't want to break this. It could be a fragile little piece of electronic equipment. And then once you've got it off, that tape comes right off, cleans up nicely. But then you take the back off of it and replace the battery. It's got a little battery in there. The batteries are easy to access. Okay, they're easy to find batteries. But as the battery life, not a problem. Not a problem. The battery life on this is fantastic. You won't have a problem with battery life on this scope if you use it properly. I hunted with this half a dozen times, half a dozen different sits, and it's still got a full battery. So I just turned it off. And that's leaving it on all morning, turning it off over lunch, leaving it on all afternoon, turning it off before I go home. And just doing that time and time again, not a problem. As for the turn it on and turn it off thing, some people have suggested that a firmware update will fix that so that it does automatically shut off after 30 minutes. I hope they don't fix that. I hope they leave it alone because I really, really like it. I mean, I like it the way it is. Don't change a thing. Here's an interesting observation as to the rangefinder that is in this scope. Now, really how these scopes work is you see the rangefinder right here. It's sending out that beam. And I can tell you, I've mounted a Tacticam right here on it, shooting off the side. Not a problem. It ranges just fine with the Tacticam in place. So does the BURRIS Oracle X for what that's worth. But with that rangefinder on there, you certainly don't want to block that. You want to make sure you keep it clean. That's why I use lens covers, because that covers that as well. If I put this lens cover on there, it actually covers the rangefinder as well. Very important, so you don't get that all gunked up. So that way it works flawlessly, right? We want it to work flawlessly. But one interesting thing about the rangefinder on this, it does not range up close the way that the BURRIS Oracle X does. Remember back when I did a video on that, one real big advantage of the BURRIS Oracle X is if you're in a tree stand and it got a deer at 5 yards and you aim down and range at it, it's going to give you a dot for that deer. But at 5 yards, because the scope is up higher, you actually have to lift the barrel of the crossbow in order to get the scope, our line of vision through the scope, to line up with the arrow's intended flight path. I'll take a shot at 5 yards using what's basically a 30-yard reticle, and I hit exactly where that red dot was. Can you believe that? This does not seem to ever range closer than the 20-yard line, right? Like it goes to 20 yards, and when I shot my buck on state game lands, I'm ranging it, boom, 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 ranging it as it's coming in. And it gave me a 20-yard dot, and I shot it. On a 6.5-yard shot, it's giving me a 20-yard aiming point again. And it doesn't give you a dot that's slightly above the 20-yard line for a 15-yard shot or something like that, or a 10-yard shot. But almost more importantly to me, it doesn't give me a dot at 30 yards if I'm shooting 6 yards. You're shooting up close, you do have to aim really high. Really high. It's counterintuitive. But if the deer is 6 yards away, you want to be aiming as though the deer is 30 yards away sometimes. Try it with your own gear. Go out there in the backyard, you'll see what I'm talking about. This does not compensate for that. You just need to be aware of that when you're out there afield. And if you're in a tree stand and you've got a deer at 5 yards, you're going to want to know this, right? You're going to want to know, is it 5 yards, 7 yards? Where does it switch over from aiming high to aiming normal, right? And that is going to vary from one crossbow setup to another. Oh, we have a visitor. Hello, Chrissy. Hi, little cat. Let's talk about eye relief a little bit. Eye relief on the scope. What's interesting about this, I don't have any problem with it at all. I've got it right where I like it, and on the swat, it's going to vary from one crossbow to another, but I pick it up and kaboom, it's right there. And I can tell you, I remember, and I will never forget, shooting my buck on state game lands, that little buck, my last image of that knock going through the shoulder of that deer, perfect shot, and looking at it through this scope, watching that arrow go, watching that lighted knock go through that deer. It was perfect, right? It's crossbow perfection. That's what we're aiming for. No pun intended, but that's what we're aiming for every time we're out there in the woods. The eye relief on this, I don't have any issue with it where I have this scope set. And for what it's worth, right there is perfect eye relief for me. And I can see the top. Now, the data is all at the top of the screen. And you'll see even with the scope off, there's a little spot up there where that goes, where that data appears. Other people who have looked through the scope did not like where I had this set. They kept complaining. One-eyed archer, for example, and other people I hunted with when I was hunting with Jim, complained that they couldn't see the top of the scope. But it turns out, we played around with it a little bit, and once they got the right eye relief, they didn't have that issue. I honestly believe that if they were to put the scope on there where it works for them, they would have good eye relief and not have that problem. So I think that's easily fixed by, you just set the scope up like any other scope for your eye relief. But because there's data on the screen, you're going to want to make sure you get the scope in the right spot. If it's not comfortable, don't be afraid to change it, re-sight in, but go ahead and change it. You're going to want to make sure you've got that scope set where you want it. Another thing to point out about this scope that I really, really like is the size and the weight. Right? Smaller, faster, lighter, denser, cheaper. I talked about that before. You ever heard that? Smaller, faster, lighter, denser, and cheaper. That is how we measure improvements in technology, really. And this scope is smaller than its competitors, really. And it's lighter, right? So two important things. I really like the fact that this is a little bit lighter on the crossbow. It sets up perfect. It is so easy to carry in and out of the woods on state game lands that and use, the less footprint you have in terms of visibility. I've talked about this in other videos, but we're not just worried about scent when we're out there in the woods. We're not just worried about how much noise we make, but movement is a big deal. And the size of your crossbow, the size of your scope, those are two things that really affect your effectiveness in the woods. Deer pick up on that movement, and a giant crossbow or a bigger scope, that big eyeball out front, right? It's like a giant eyeball staring at the deer. They see a round circle, they think it's an eyeball. And the predator's eyes are in the front of their head, and deer know that, right? This is a predator. This scope, this crossbow is a predator, and its eye is in the front, facing its prey. That is something that deer see, and the smaller you have, the smaller footprint you have for that, you're just going to be more effective. Should you buy a range-finding scope at all? Is it something that you need, right? Is it something that's going to improve your crossbow hunting? Well, there's one way to answer that question. And I write about this in my book, The Death by Bunjie Crossbow Method. Thanks to my wife, she sort of expressed this to me. But would it make any difference overall in what you're doing? Would it have made the difference in a previous hunt? And I can tell you that a range-finding scope does make a difference. Period. It will improve your accuracy. There's no question about that. That's the whole point, right? Gone are the days of ranging a deer, knowing it's at 26 yards and thinking, do I aim at 30? Do I aim as though it's 20? Do I aim in between? And if you're splitting the difference, what if it's 27? Do I aim a little bit? You don't have to think about all that stuff on the fly. You've got a dot, you put the dot on the deer and pull the trigger. Boom. It does make a difference. And in fact, remember the problems I had with a rangefinder. right? A rangefinder when I was hunting with One-Eyed Archer at his place in that blind, low light. The rangefinder was picking up the deer just fine, but the reticles, the lighted reticles inside of that, I had them turned up way too much, and you won't have that problem with this. Brightness on this has a brightness button, very easy to adjust. You just hit that button and turn it down. And you're playing with it while you're hunting. Turn it up, turn it down, get it to your liking, depending on the time of day when you're out there. Very easy to operate. You don't have to go into settings or anything like that. And that's an improvement over the BURRIS Oracle X, in my opinion, as well. But it's also an improvement over rangefinders that don't have that feature, that don't make it that easy. So there's an instance just from this year where it would have made a difference. Having this scope on this crossbow, I would have killed a doe that night. Not to mention, why carry a rangefinder and a scope? Just carry a rangefinding scope, right? Like, it's one piece of gear that does both is better than two pieces of gear, in my opinion. See, even Chrissy agrees. The zoom, right? This does not have the zoom features that the BURRIS Oracle X has. It doesn't have the zoom features that the Hawk XB30 Zoom FFP offers, for example. Those different scopes, see ya, kitty. Those different scopes have a zoom feature built in. Pretty cool. As my eyes get worse as I get older, I kind of like a zoom scope, right? I like to be able to zoom into 6 or 8 and hunt a lot closer. And I noticed with the Zoom FFP that I was shooting deer at 6 to 8, somewhere in that range, even at 20 yards, and I didn't feel the need to adjust it. This is set at 4, and it's actually been adequate. For you guys that shoot 80 yards, 100 yards, and maybe not the right scope for that kind of application. But at any hunting distance for me, 50, 60 and in, I have no issue whatsoever. I'm not going to shoot 60 yards with this crossbow setup. I can tell you, 16.4 yards, it was working just fine. And had I wanted to take a shot at 42 yards when I first saw that deer, it would have worked just fine for that shot as well. Low light, 2 considerations with low light that we're interested in. Everybody's interested in low light, of course. How does the glass work in low light? And I can tell you, it's adequate. It's not as good in low light as the Zoom FFP, that XB30 from Hawk. It is not as good as that scope. It is not the best scope ever in low light. It's adequate. And for me, again, that's fine. I can tell you, though, it's a little bit better than my eye is in low light, right, at the end of the night. And I can tell you that almost across the board, it's better than my phone does. My video recording on my phone, anyway, in low light. And that's kind of like the measuring stick for me, because I film, and filming's a big part of what I do. You guys that hug every moment of light and hunt right up to the very minute of the end of last light, legal shooting light, may not find it adequate, right? But this is not a scope for you then. I don't know what to tell you, but if that's important. But for me, for all my hunting purposes, I have no problem with the low light ability of this scope whatsoever. The second thing I'll tell you about low light in here is, and this was a really good question that was asked by friends of Bunjie, what about this scope and the reticles? Are they too bright to hunt in low light? And I can tell you no. You can turn it up and down real easily with this little button on top. A dot can get brighter or dimmer. And if you dim it right down, it's not going to wash out the reticles in low light or anything like that. You can shoot real low light with this scope and won't have an issue. What happens when the reticles are dead, right? When the battery's dead? Yeah, it does have crosshairs for 20. Those are etched in there good, and you'll be able to shoot at 20 with no lights at all. It does have other markings on the reticles, and you could try to memorize what those are because it is a fixed scope. It's probably going to remain, it's not going to be exactly 30, 40, and 50 or whatever, I don't think. But you could probably memorize those other yardages and hunt beyond 20 yards. But I don't worry about that. If the battery goes dead on this, I'm just going to put in a second battery because I always carry a spare battery. So, the question of whether, well, what do you do if the scope breaks, right? If it just goes dead on you and it won't work, then I just don't hunt, right? I go back and quit hunting for the day. That's just me. I'm not going to hunt. That'd be like asking me, what if my phone goes dead and I can't record? I'm not going to hunt if I can't record. I don't care if it's the world's biggest buck. I'm going to go home because if I don't have it on video, that's my reason for being out there, so I can share my hunts with you so that I can evaluate my abilities and my efforts. And if I can't do that, then I'm willing to just say thank you, and go home. And it'd be the same thing with the scope. Like if the crossbow breaks, sometimes I got another one like in the truck or whatever, but I'm just going to go home, fix what's broken, and come back. And it almost never happens. So I don't plan for that kind of contingency, if that makes any sense. So for me, that's not an issue. If it's an issue for you, yes, it does have fixed reticles, and you could probably guess away. So next video here, pretty soon you're going to see a video from me. I'm going to be changing the limbs out on the Patriot, taking off the splintered limb that I've got on the Patriot and replace that with fresh new limbs and play around with that a little bit, dress it up, put a scope on it, shoot a little bit, and maybe go out in the late crossbow season, which is what a lot of people call the flintlock muzzleloader season after Christmas here in Pennsylvania. I call it the late crossbow season, and we'll go out during that season with the Patriot. Vintage scope. Anyway, check out the twins, huh? Two really good looking crossbows. Won't this one look really, really good with its own CERTIS? I think it will. Until next time, all hail the twins and all hail Bunjie.